Hello, my name is Lizzie Karen, and this is part 3 of a series on a man I knew as Tehut, but who I think may also be called Thoth or Hermes. So this part of the series is on the wisdom of Thoth or Tehut or Hermes. You can call him what you want. But before I start, in case you are new to my channel, I'd like to give you a quick introduction. So, this channel is all about the prior world, the one before the deluge, the amazing civilization that has all but been lost to history. It is what we call today Atlantis, but in my regressions, it is called Tantal. What I have to tell you comes from a lifetime of dream regressions from what I believe was my previous incarnation. I'm retired now, but I have a massive collection of journals to draw upon where I've written down notes from the various dreams that I've had. I'm sure this collection of wisdom is far from complete, but it's all that I have from the things that I can remember or the things that I've noted from the regressions about Tehut. These are the teachings of Tehut. Well, they're what I can remember, or as I said, have noted in my journal regarding the wisdom of Tehut. The first thing, and then one of the most important things I can remember is this. The search for truth and the pursuit of knowledge are the most rewarding of all occupations. Clarity comes only when more knowledge and truth is found, but absolute clarity is elusive, because the more you know, you discover there is yet more that you need to know. To understand that which is great, you must understand that which is minute. To understand that which is hard or impenetrable, you must understand that which is soft or penetrable. Opposites aid in the understanding of each other and aid very much in the understanding of all middle ground in between. Furthermore, there is good reason for this, he said. Existence of all comes from being pulled from nothing into positive and negative. Balance is maintained by extremes and everything in between. This philosophy applies to everything in life. Hot versus cold, love versus hate, black versus white. Well, not really white, more like a lack of color altogether, but there isn't really a word for it. Pain versus pleasure, male versus female, etc. For every problem, there is a remedy. For every disease, there is a cure, even old age. The fix for darkness is light. Sometimes there may be many steps in between finding such a fix, however. Everything is vibration, but this is the one exception to the rule of extremes, as infinite movement is infinite stillness. A bit like the snake that bites its own tail. To understand vibration is to understand all matter. Vibration is like a multifaceted key which has many aspects. Speed, volume, size, regularity, pulse, consistency. Controlling density, repulsion, attraction, whether it's solid or liquid, temperature, and so much more. This is what vibration does. This is a level of understanding that requires much study and experience, but once understood, one can easily understand that vibration is the difference between a leaf and a rock, or fire and water, sentience and inanimate, even life and death. Vibration is energy. Energy is matter, and it controls the ebb and flow of all things. Our world is alive because we get warmth and light from the sun, and our tides and stability from the moon. Without these two, we would just be a rock in space. So the sun and the moon are extremely important to us. We are responsible for keeping our world alive and healthy. It breathes, we breathe. It consumes, we consume. If it hurts, we will hurt. And if it dies, we will die. To understand others, learn to understand and control yourself. To hurt others is to hurt your greater self, as we are all a part of something greater, much greater that we cannot imagine. Our thoughts and actions control the quality of the life that we lead. Everything that has been throughout time is recorded and continues without change. But that which has not yet occurred waits in the realms of probability, ever changing as new dice are cast. Be kind and gentle, destroying as little as possible to live. Be aware of all that is around you, so you can care for it. Without love in your heart for others, for animals, for our world, all the knowledge in the world can never be transformed into wisdom. There are many worlds and many realms and many journeys. Life, death, and rebirth is the cycle for many of these journeys. There are unseen laws that govern our world. These are the laws that make existence possible, give us everything, creates form, controls the cycles of life, and everything we see around us. Respect the laws of science, the laws of life and nature, and the laws of what is and must be. I will now move on to religion, because although some of these snippets of wisdom sound almost like religion, that couldn't be further from the truth, because what he said on religion was this: I teach nothing that could be described as religion, and I never want my teachings to be used or perverted for religious purposes. Religion is just a tool used by the strong to control the weak. It is nothing but make-believe. What I teach is real and provable, requires no deity, no magic, just the forces of nature and science. There are no gods, only the oneness to which we all belong. And yet, in the minds of those of little education or capacity to think and understand, the only explanation for much of what can be learned to them is just magic or the powers of a god. Religion relies on belief as if it is a favorable trait. But, as Tehut emphasized, that the only time belief was important or even useful was when you had to believe in your teacher in order to learn and get to the position where you can achieve a point of knowing, and then you no longer need to believe because you know. There is an explanation for everything, even the things that are seemingly exceptions to the rule, even if it's the rule of nature or the rule of science. If there's an exception, there will be a reason for it. Tehut was very clear that what he taught should never be used to create a religion or a cult or the such like. We are all just teachers and students at various levels of knowing. Even the teacher can learn from the student, so no one is above any other. Some people are further along the journey of knowledge. It is not for us to look down on them or for them to look up to us, but rather for us to give them our hand, to put the hand down to them, to lift them up. This is really just a very, very small snippet of the wisdom of Tehut. And even though I only have a very small amount of these snippets of wisdom, I realize that Tehut has actually helped and advised Uran on the laws of Uran. So I think it would be fairly safe to say that most of the laws of Uran had Tehut philosophy behind them. So I will next talk about the laws of Uran. But I must also say that I'm not even a quarter way through all my journals. So as I go through them, when I find anything that is a snippet of knowledge that I think came from Tehut, what I will do is I'll get it together and eventually maybe do another episode of things that I've forgotten about, that I've dug out of my journals. So even though this isn't very much, I hope that I will find more as I progress through my many, many journals. Anyway, back onto the laws of Uran. Tehut said that, like the laws of science and nature, civilization will not succeed without laws. And it enables a level of freedom that would not otherwise be possible. Now, I know this sounds like an oxymoron, but if we look at it another way, if there were no law about murder, and some people thought, hey, that's okay, I'll just kill someone and take their stuff, and people would just felt like they could do that, then other people, or probably the majority of people, would not feel free to even leave their homes. And that's pretty much how we as a people felt in Kron. I know I was only a kid at the time, but we were constantly scared. And the primitives were very erratic, so we never really felt as if there was a lull. But when we moved to Tantal, we gained so much more freedom. And it actually was very enabling and allowed us to focus on other things. So let's talk about the creation of the laws of Uran. So Uran, if you hadn't seen any of my other channels, was the first leader of Tantal. And these are the laws which Uran had carved on the great obelisk, and which I think Tehut had a very significant hand in writing. Number 1. No person is above any other person, but everyone must have a role, whether it be student, teacher, administrator, architect, whatever. Tehut was clear that for civilization to be successful, balance was needed, but if someone was unable to contribute in the traditional sense, they were not forced into difficulty, but allowed to contribute in other ways. Number 2, respect everyone. Those of you under 20 must follow the instructions of your mother and father, because they will teach you what you need to know in order to live a long life and be happy. But what people do here, other than for those of under 20, is their own business, as long as all are consenting and it is within the law. So do not interfere with your neighbor's business. Do not interfere in any way with the primitives, and do not judge others just because they're different or act in a different way or look different, etc. Number 3, cause no hurt, whether it be physically or mentally, whether it be man or beast. If by accident or self-defense you kill or injure, then a process of forgiveness must be undertaken. So the most important thing in this rule is to be compassionate. Number 4, do not mislead. To hurt through dishonesty is not acceptable. Once you commit to a mate, you must be faithful or honest. So, if you do not want to continue in the relationship, then you end it. Deceit is not a valid option. So by being faithful or by being honest, you are not harming by misleading. That doesn't mean you have to stay with someone that you don't want to be with. It just means that when you get to that point where you no longer want to be with them, you are honest with them. You don't sneak around behind their back and do things that would be classified as being unfaithful. And that is why the rule stated, you must be faithful or honest. Speaking personally, I would have thought it should have been faithful and honest, because if you're honest about it, then you split up with them and you're not being unfaithful. But number 5, you will not take any item that is not yours, nor will you claim the credit for any achievement that was not your own. Number 6, keep no animals or primitives in captivity, no matter how beautiful the cage you have created for them. Pets must choose you, and they must be free to leave if they wish. Working animals like bulls, cows, and ostrich must never be caged or treated badly. They too must be free to leave if they indicate they so desire. 7, there will be no worship of imaginary deities in this land. The primitives only do this because they do not know better. Do not worship even me. I'm only a person like you. Science and nature are what we believe in. But even in science and nature, we must hold ourselves to standards. These standards are separate to our laws. Ethics in science. And the most important thing all round is rational thinking, because it aids in all things. Number 8, cause no harm to our world. If we deplete resources or create things that cause an unnatural build-up, then our world will suffer. Sustainability is the key. As an aside, the people of Tantal would never have tolerated plastics because there was nothing you could do with them afterwards. Even recycling is a bit limited. Number 9. This is Tantal. This is your homeland. Remain here or at your assigned university location. Do not go beyond the boundaries into the wild lands without permission and good reason. Our land area is designated for good reasons. Here we are free. We are protected from animals that are wild and from the primitives that are cruel. And we occupy only the space that we need. We use only the resources that we can renew, and nothing is taken that cannot be replaced, and nothing is ever left behind. For many years there were only the 9 laws, but after the cure, when people lived for a long time, it was deemed necessary that a 10th law be carved onto the great obelisk. And this is law number 10. Your lives are unlimited in duration, and it is for this reason that every person can only have 1 child in their lifetime. The consequences would otherwise impact our society negatively. Now, this might sound like a really extreme law, but if you think about it, let's say someone lived for 1,000 years and they could naturally have a child, every year or so. So that would be, let's just round it. Let's just say that it was 500 children in 1,000 years. And those 500 children had 500 children of their own. And those 500, it's not just exponential. It's a level of population growth which is mind-numbing, seriously. But anyway, that was law number 10. I actually did an episode about when this law was announced because it was such a very vivid regression. I guess because it was quite a significant announcement, so it's not the sort of thing that people forget easily. If these laws made it sound like it was a bit of a boring place, that's really, really wrong, because it was actually a very exciting place. People gained purpose and kudos in what they did every day by their achievements, like finding a solution to a problem or inventing something that provided betterment or creating something of great beauty. This didn't make them richer or more powerful, but it did make them very popular at dinner parties. I know that's just a bit of a joke, but no, seriously. Okay, there were some people who went through periods of time where they were treated a little bit like a star because they'd achieved something, but that would then quieten down and somebody else would be achieving something, and people would be very pleased with what they were doing. And even if you weren't someone who was achieving something amazing, you had a great satisfaction because you never had to do jobs that you didn't want to do. If you didn't fancy, trying to find new types of fruit trees, then, you didn't have to. The only time you had to do anything like that was when you were going through the learning process and you had to go through all the universities. But other than that, nobody was forcing you to do a job that you didn't like. And there was a lot of effort put into finding pleasure in work for people. So in many ways, it was actually a very free society. You could, wear whatever you want. You could love whoever you want to love, whether it be same-sex or from someone from a different area or someone from even a primitive. But, there were a few limitations on that, but that's a whole different story. You could participate in activities, even if they hurt you. But as long as it didn't hurt anybody else, then that was fine. It's your body. You're in control of your own body. You can do whatever you want with it. You could even have medical procedures done that, somebody else might think that was a bit stupid, but it's your body. You have a right to do that if you want to. You could, change your hair color. You could even change your sex or your skin color. Whatever you wanted to. It was a very free approach to things. You could choose to participate in things like celebrations or activities if you wanted to or not. No one was going to criticize you or even make you do something you didn't want to do. You can have your own opinions on things, even if somebody else didn't like your opinion. It's your opinion. Yeah, okay, that's yours. Fine. You could eat whatever you wanted, as long as it wasn't causing damage. So if it hurt an animal, for example, meat, that wasn't acceptable. Or if it meant that you had to go trampling out into the wilds to find a horseradish that only grew in the wilds, no, that wasn't acceptable either. But, you could always put forward a suggestion to one of the universities to come up with a horseradish that, could be grown within the area. Anyway, that sounds like a bit of nonsense, really, but But when it came to eating meat, everyone actually was vegetarian by choice. But eggs and milk were okay because the animals involved in the process were loved and happy. They weren't treated the way they are in today's society. You didn't have male baby cows being slaughtered because we only wanted the female cows. The male cows had their own purpose, and it was for security of the area. They had quite a nice life, and that would be quite a good thing for me to do an episode on, because the treatment of animals was quite unusual but really lovely. And eggs from ostriches, for example, they weren't fertilized, and that's the sort of thing that it might be useful to do an episode on if anybody was interested. The cows and the bulls were admittedly kept separate because they did have the separate roles in society, because the bulls were the guards and the cows were for the milk, but both were treated like pets, like people really loved them. And ostrich feathers, they were never cut. They were never plucked. They were only ever cut if ever one was required, but never very many were taken, and certainly not to excess. So the laws and attitudes did change somewhat when Uran was deposed, but it was really based on a few major things that people didn't like about the way things happened. The one-child law and stuff like that. And but the actual main philosophy of life remained pretty much the same. And it was only when, the population and other things that happened that it really affected the culture of the place. But that's a different story. And if anyone would like me to talk about what happened when the new laws came in, well, you've got a fair idea. I've given you a fair idea, I think, already from the episodes on lost history. And but if there's more that people would like to know about, I'd be more than happy to do an episode on that. And I know I've tended to focus on one particular time frame, the earliest time frame of Tantau or Atlantis, when people still wanted to operate as a unified force and were looking out for each other. This was the time of Uran, and I'd say a good chunk of the time when Bella was the leader. There was no need for money and no need for a lot of the nasty things that we see in the world today. And I guess it reminds me a little bit of that song by John Lennon, about Imagine, I think it's called. But people did actually have possessions, by the way, but they only had what they wanted. I'm guessing that some people might say, well, this sounds like communism. Well, no, it wasn't. It didn't feel like communism because you could have whatever you wanted. If you saw your friend with a new flying device with, gold tips on the whatevers, you could just request one. There would be no reason for you not to have it. Everything was available, but the strange thing was that most people chose kind of a minimal lifestyle. They really only had the possessions around them that they wanted or were of extreme sentimental value to them. They didn't tend to collect stuff just for the sake of collecting things. And when things were no longer required, they went off for recycling. So, or they went to somewhere where somebody would do it up, or somebody else would have it. You could just pop along to one of these places and even just have a look round, see if there's anything that you want. It didn't require money. And the people who did the recycling, that was their contribution to society, and they took great joy in doing that. Anyway, that's the end of the episode on the wisdom of Tehut, And I may do another episode, as I said, but for now, that's it. So I guess I'll catch you all next time. Bye.